All right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Museum of Glass. My name's Kareem Candy. Today we have a very special guest, multi-instrumentalist and amazing tap dancer and educator, Alex Dugdale, with us today. This is part of a monthly series that we've been doing now for several years here at the Museum of Glass, and we always do this on the third Sunday of every month, and it's a pleasure to be able to do this. We interview our guest artists, and we take a short break and do a quick sound check, and then we do a set of music. Before we get started, of course, I'd like to thank our sponsors, of course, the Museum of Glass, Ted Brown Music, KNKX, Tacoma Creates, Titus Will Cars, and Edward Jones financial consultant Rick Gray for helping to make this series possible. And it's a pleasure to be able to do this. We'll conduct the interview for about 45 minutes. If you have questions for Alex or myself, feel free to let us know after that. Or if you're watching online, feel free to put them in the comments, and we will get to those as soon as we can. But other than that, Alex, it's a pleasure to have you here with us today.
Man, I can't tell you how excited I am to be here, Kareem. Thank you so much for having me. I've been a huge fan of yours for a long time, and so stoked that we're, finally friends and colleagues, and so happy to be on the show. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure, and so we're going to delve deep into your dark and stormy past. So for people that don't know, I mean, you're an amazing multi-instrumentalist, composer, band leader, educator. We're going to talk about that in just a second. And also amazing tap dancer. So how did, number one, where did music start for you? Where did you grow up?
Well, I was actually born in South America, in Cali, Colombia. I was adopted when I was just a baby, like less than a year old. And I grew up for the first year or so of my life actually here in the South Sound on McNeil Island. My dad was the prison doctor. He had gotten a loan from the state of Washington to pursue medical school, and they're like, to pay that off, you'll be the prison doctor. So on the paperwork, they described it as a lovely rural setting. It was a prison island. But then after that, I grew up in the north end of Seattle, Washington, and that's where I have been ever since.
Well, I know we've done enough of these interviews where there's always different roads to how music began. But for you, where did music start? Where did the beginnings of that happen?
Yeah, so for me, I think my personal, interactions with music began with my feet and tap dancing. I was maybe 4 years old, and I was watching Sesame Street, and Savion Glover was putting the baby lion to sleep with the sand dance, and I was like, oh man, I need to do that. That's what I meant to do. I need, my 4-year-old self connected with that immediately. And so, but not a lot of places would take a 4-year-old tap dancing student, so I had to pat around the house in plastic bottom slippers for 2 years before a place on Capitol Hill would take me. And so it was through tap dancing that I first fell in love with the rhythm. And then a few years later, it was in New York City, 2001 New York City Tap Dance Festival. And this guy was playing Take the A-Train on the steel drums in the subway at the 42nd Street subway station. I had just finished a sound check for the show that I was going to do as part of the Tap Festival. They had flown me out for the Young Talent Showcase. And I was like, Mom, I know that song. Can I go dance with him? And she's like, you're going to have to ask that guy. I was like, oh, okay. And so I was like, sir, can I dance with you? He was like, sure, man. He was like this gigantic dude with these huge dreads. And I modeled my look after him. He was very important. And so I danced with this guy in the subway, and that was when I knew I had to explore all aspects of music, not just rhythm, but pitch as well. And I had already started to play some clarinet at the time because, what do? You join the school band, right? That's what all the cool kids did. But I knew I had to get serious about jazz and whatever this music was, and to explore not just the rhythm, but the harmony, the pitch. And that's when I decided, yep, that's it. I'm joining jazz band in 6th grade. And that was it.
It's interesting you say that because I too joined music, but the cool kids weren't doing band, as I recall. I was one of the band nerds, as they say. But anyways, so back to dance. Was there music? Did your parents listen to music in the house?
They absolutely did, and it was a beautiful, eclectic range of music with everything except everything except hip hop and jazz. I had everything from classical music to Prince, and everything in between, like Joni Mitchell, the Beatles, Queen, Prince, Michael Jackson, Chicago, Earth, Wind and Fire, like and all of that. But then when I was 6, then I got introduced to Duke Ellington, Count Basie. Then I got introduced to Charlie Palmieri. Then I got introduced to Tito Puente. Then I got introduced to Dexter Gordon, Lester Young, Freddie Hubbard. I was like, whoa, what is this? Then I got introduced to James Brown. Then I got introduced to Curtis Mayfield. Then I got introduced to Isaac Hayes. I was like, oh, what's this? Oh, what's that? Ooh, what's this? And then it was.
You're saying
beautiful.
It's 6 years old because a lot of people, maybe that comes later. Like maybe their parents were into like stuff from their generation,
Right.
And then when they go into like maybe jazz band or middle school, maybe you start introducing. But you're saying at 6 years old, you're hearing about Duke Ellington and Count Basie. That's, via your parents or?
No, via my tap class.
Okay, gotcha.
So yeah, and once I enrolled in tap class, between the ages of 6 and 10, then I've been living with Duke Ellington's Take the A Train since I was 6 years old. So that's 28 years now.
And you said you started with a class on Capitol Hill. What was the academy or
So
school?
it was like creative dance space, and my teacher was the great Cheryl Johnson of Johnson and Peters Tap Dance Studio, which is no longer, but they had a studio. They had a little basement studio on this space in Capitol Hill, and then they opened their own studio in Green Lake, which is currently Exit Space.
That's what I'm asking, because besides this, it's also like what was the scene like and who was around at the time. So,
yeah.
Okay, so then you joined school band, and so you're in Seattle, South Seattle. So where did that start? Because Seattle has a long history.
I was North Seattle.
Okay, North Seattle.
Yeah.
So where were you? What happened?
So let's see. Yeah, I was at elementary school band. Dan Rowe was my teacher in elementary school. Then middle school, I was at Eckstein Middle School under Mock Escobedo. I was taking, and then I decided I wanted to take some private lessons, and I took lessons with Nathaniel Schleimer. Yep, he was my first private instructor. He's like a father, second brother to me. I love that guy to death. He taught me how to transpose. I transposed from an early age, and he loved that I tap danced and gave me a lot of rhythm stuff to do. And I owe a lot to him, but also a lot to Mock Escobedo, who I look up to as an educational hero, because believe it or not, I was really shy. I did not like to talk to other people. I was very quiet, didn't really come out of my shell very much. So if any of my students are listening to this, I imagine their jaws are like, huh? Because I'm like really rambunctious, really friendly, hosting award shows and all this stuff like this. I've been hosting the Golden Ear Awards for a few years now, and I'm on stage hosting my bands and Larger Than Life, Life of the Party, all that stuff. But I was not like that when I was like 10, 11. I was very reserved. And Mock Escobedo saw that, and he, through music and creating a great environment and community, helped me come out of my shell through the clarinet, through the saxophone, and then finding out that I could tap dance and celebrating that and finding other people in that community to celebrate that really helped me flourish as a person, gave me a lot of confidence. And I remember feeling so good about myself. And as an educator and also as a musician, wanting to do the same thing for my friends, my students, and Duke Ellington, one of my favorite people, who didn't write generic trumpet 1, trumpet 2 parts or sax 1, sax 2, like wrote the names of the people. This is Cookie's part, this is Cat's part, this is Cootie's part, this is Quentin's part. Would write for the part of the individual players to bring out the best in them. That's something that I've always admired, and I always want to bring to my teaching, to my playing, So as the bands change, as my students change, this is what my teaching has always changed, my playing has always changed. If I have a different drummer or a bass player for the gig, I'm going to call different tunes. It's not just always going to be my standard book. It's not always going to be my standard teaching method, not the same lessons.
Well, so now you said clarinet and then saxophone. Did you start on alto? Did you start on tenor?
I started on tenor. And I did tenor through 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. 8th grade, I picked up bass clarinet, which was super fun. And then when I got to high school, I switched over to alto because we had way too many tenor players. And then I was under Scott Brown, which was incredible.
So the Roosevelt dynasty was Scott Brown. Yeah. Okay.
And I had the pleasure of being with Scott Brown for 4 years, doing 4 trips to New York for essentially Ellington, which was incredible. Really learning a lot about discipline and band leadership, taking things to the next level, realizing the highest potential, expecting the best. Realizing that on the one hand you're still kids, but you guys are capable of this hard work, this discipline. You guys want this, and you can do it. So let's get there. I owe Scott Brown quite a bit as well. Yet again, a master educator, just a fountain of knowledge, an intimidating amount of knowledge. That man is a master, and another person that I've looked up to as an educator, and I'm lucky to call a friend and colleague as well. So that was an amazing experience. 4 years at Roosevelt, and during that time, I should also say that I took 2 lessons. I was taking 2 lessons a week, one from Michael Edwards on clarinet, and then Mark Taylor on saxophone.
Doesn't get any better than that because Mike had all the pit from all the shows and all the Broadway shows.
So I was just like killing it on the clarinet. So and again, every time Ellington rolled around, doing the Ellington Nutcracker, I was getting all the clarinet solos. That was a lot of fun. And then essentially Ellington rolled around and, learning everything I could about that music, and then also lots of clarinet too. So it was a lot of fun. And, learning about sound and theory and stuff from Mark Taylor, it was good.
Well, so now I'm curious, when you were younger in North Seattle, we could talk about elementary school, middle school. Were there musicians around town? Because at that time, how old are you? If you don't mind me
I'm
asking?
35.
35. So you're younger than me. So, there's a lot of places to play and go hear music. So were you going out and checking out a lot of stuff when you were in elementary school, middle school?
Right. So at that time, elementary and middle school, I was more of a tap dancer. I was definitely doing a lot more tap dancing than I was doing music stuff. So at that time, I was actually doing more stuff at like the New Orleans. And doing more stuff at the Pink Door, and traveling to tap festivals, in state, out of state, and doing shows. Then I was doing music stuff. And then when I was in high school, then I was going to places like the Triple Door, going to Jazz Alley. I think I went to Tula's a couple of times. But then, being in Roosevelt, then you're also gigging a lot. So I was also splitting my time between gigging with Roosevelt and doing tap dance gigs. So going to check out music, was taken, that time that I would have been checking out music was taken up by tap dancing. So going out and listening and exploring that I was just doing at home on my CDs and my cassettes, and doing in my tap classes or in my private lessons. So going out and hearing live music in Seattle was one thing that I regret that I didn't have enough time to do. But I do think that being in SRJO, and hearing those people live, when I was 16, having the honor to be the tap dancer in the sacred music concerts, and being able to do that for, like 7 or 8 years before actually joining the band full time, and then sitting with those people and hearing those people, was a fantastic experience. And I feel in some ways kind of made up for the fact that I wasn't going out, being able to go out and hear Mark Taylor and Hadley at the clubs, but I was able to be with them on stage.
You and I know this, but for people that aren't aware, SRJO is the Seattle Repertory Jazz Orchestra, correct?
Yeah.
And they've been around now for how many
30-ish years?
Okay.
Yeah, just over 30 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're studying with Mark. You have your roots with Nathaniel and your school classes. And who was the other? Oh, you said Mike Edwards.
Yeah.
Were you being part of Roosevelt? I mean, they do a lot of like putting that stuff together. Did you put any shows together on your own, or go out to any sessions and play, or you didn't really have time?
No, I didn't really have time because I was split between Roosevelt and all of their stuff, and then my own tap dancing stuff with Johnson and Peters, and and honestly, up until my junior year in high school, I thought that maybe I'm going to major in tap dancing. That would be really fun. I wanted to be like a tap dancer. Like the saxophone stuff is great. I love it. It's great expression. I have a lot of fun. I can major in music I can minor in music and major in dance. But I couldn't do that. There was no programs that would let me major in just tap dancing. In fact, my tap teacher still tells the story. I'm like 5.5 years old. I'm walking in and I said, I'm like this tall, right? And I said, my name is Alex Dugdale, and I would like to tap dance and only tap dance, please. Because the half-hour class was split between 15 minutes of creative movement and 15 minutes of tap. And I just wanted to tap. I didn't want to. I just wanted to tap, and so I just asked to only tap dance, please. And they're like, "Well, that's really nice that you would ask, but no, you have to do both." I was like, "Okay," but I just wanted to tap, and unfortunately, there were no programs that would allow that. I'd have to have backgrounds in ballet and jazz and modern dance, and I just didn't have that. So like, okay, let's major in music, and because I know that I love music. I also have kind of an affinity for working with younger people. It's a great way to make money. It's a great way to connect, and I can still gig. And I know a lot of people already in Seattle. I've been working at my old middle school a bunch. I was already teaching a couple of my neighbors how to play, and it seemed to be going well. And when you're 17 or 18 years old, $40 is a lot of money. And so I was thinking to myself, well, let's see what music school could be like. And I decided instead of getting an education degree right away, if I wanted to be a music teacher, well, I better be, darn good at music first. So let's go to a 4-year music school and get really good at music, and then, get a teaching degree or whatever.
So tangent really quick because I want to go there next. But for people, a lot of times, I've got an 8-year-old daughter and she's waiting to dance. But you don't really see a lot of schools that just focus on tap. Now, from coming from where you began to where you are now, where are opportunities for people to learn how to do tap well from people, in your opinion, that are really doing a good job demonstrating it? The Alex Dugdale School of Tap, or what are we talking about here? Okay,
yeah. So actually in the South End here, there's a guy, Javon Miller, who I love. Do you know Javon? Or Puyallup, yeah. Yeah, so guys, yeah, if you wanna know what's up, Javon Miller in the kind of the southeast South area, and he's actually he also studied some saxophone, so he also knows what's up musically.
Is he originally from Seattle?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so, but I know he's down south here, and he's trying to get some stuff going. So yeah, hit up Javon Miller. He has a website, JOVONMILLER, Javon Miller for sure. In South Seattle, Cypher Goings, CIPHERGOINGS.
Wasn't he just on the cover of Earshot?
He was just on the cover of Earshot, and
yeah,
he took over for me as the tap dancer for the Sacred Concert when I wasn't able to.
Goings, is he related to Reggie?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah. And then also my longtime friend and colleague Jesse Sawyers, who this is probably not, you could look this up, but she used to be the Ivers Tap Dancing Clam. Do you remember those commercials? Yeah. So my friend Jessie was the Ivers Tap Dancing Clam. She is in my opinion the best tap dancer in Washington State, if not one of the best on the West Coast. She has studied, and she is just so knowledgeable, and she has all the experience. She is just top notch. As good of a musician as I am, she is at the same level or higher as dancing, and she is just an extreme. Like she is for me like a musician's dancer, but she's also a dancer's dancer. She both amazing, but so is Cypher, so is Javon. So those are the three that I would recommend. There's a studio in Fremont. If you're looking for group classes, called VAM Studios, VAM, run by Mark and Veronica, Veronica and Mark, VAM Studios in Fremont, which is really close to the Earshot Jazz headquarters. So if you're looking for group classes in Seattle, that's where I would go.
Awesome, thank you. We're here to talk about you, but yeah, yes.
Yeah.
So I want to go. The hour goes fast.
It does. Yeah.
All right, so you're making the decision to get your musical chops better, to become a better player first before doing ed degree.
Yeah.
So from Roosevelt, which is a massively well-known, great school for getting started, you decided to go where?
I went to the Eastman School of Music in upstate New York. I actually tested it out with a summer program, the summer before my senior year. I did like a 2-week or like a 10-day summer thing there, just to test it out, and I liked it, so I applied there and a bunch of other places, and I got accepted there, and I was like, yep, okay, great, I'm going to go to this conservatory, and I was like, oh, conservatory is like the real deal. But I made it through, and I graduated, got my certificate in saxophone performance, and then I came back to Seattle 12 years ago this week, actually. And since then, I've been making my way through Seattle.
I forgot to ask this. Forgive me. When you were at Roosevelt, because they have such a fine history of churning out great students, who else were your contemporaries while you were coming through the program there?
Ooh, yeah. Nick Wold, Logan Strassel, Wyatt Palmer. Who else? Michael Davis was around then. Evan Woodall. Who else is still doing music around now? At that time, not a lot of us continued into music. I think those of us who are still doing music right now, Logan Strassel, Evan Woodall, Andrew Morrill is still doing music. He's with this fantastic group called High Pulp that I've had the pleasure of playing with. They are just out of this world. They're so much fun. When I came back, I started mentoring kind of a younger group, including people like Santos and Noah Halpern, Lise Romali, and so like some of that younger generation who are just taking off and doing amazing. And then in the older generation, people like Andrew Miller, Nick Wold, and then of course people like Devon Lewis, who I've gotten to know, and it's just been an amazing community. In fact, right after this, there's an alumni jam that I'm supposed to be a part of. So as soon as 4:00 hits, I'm like out the door. But
drive safely.
Of course.
All right. So what about at Eastman? Who were some of the other folks in your sphere of influence, both faculty and other students while you were there?
Yeah. So faculty, Rich Thompson on drums, huge positive influence. Clay Jenkins on trumpet, very positive influence. Jeff Campbell on bass, who's Greg Campbell's brother. Do you know Greg Campbell? Seattle area drummer. Yeah. So his brother Jeff is the bass professor over at Eastman. We had my first saxophone teacher was a guy named Jose Encarnacion. Not terribly well known, I think, out here, but to me, as a Latin professor, teaching me, a student of color, had a profound influence and very positive in keeping up my spirits as one of the few jazz students of color. Kept me going and just gave me a lot of things to listen to and really reinforce, like, hey man, it's not all about harmony, it's about rhythm mostly, and that's in your blood, man. It's and you'll get it. It's like, man, that felt really good to hear. Charles Pillow was also an amazing influence on me, and students, my friend Ted Taffro, who's down in LA right now, who has just finished writing some stuff for Netflix, and he and I are collaborating on some things. David Meter, who is the piano professor at the University of North Texas, was a wonderful friend, and actually I was just on the phone with him this morning. He's doing great, and he's been did some. He actually came up and did some stuff with me for the Earshot Jazz Festival in 2022. So he's been a wonderful contemporary, and also my friend Alfonso Horn. I didn't meet him at Eastman, but one of my summer jobs was doing the 2010 Disney All-American College Band, and so I met him in that group. So, getting to know people like that has just been incredible.
You mentioned something. I'm interested in your opinion about this. Coming up in Seattle, both performing and playing, going to Roosevelt, and then at Eastman, you said student of color, where you don't have a lot of maybe instructors that are doing that. Do you feel that, which is strange to me, because this music was created mostly by great African Americans that were superhuman in what they did. Yeah. Do you see that, or did you see that coming up both with Roosevelt and the current scene and Eastman? And I'm not throwing anyone under the bus, but just from your perspective, was that the case?
Like, did I see a lot, or did I see a lack? Or
I guess more from the educational standpoint, from students studying it.
I guess I'm not really. I guess I'm not quite understanding
the ratio of people of color in jazz bands studying this music or going to school.
Oh, I see. Like the ratio of students. Of people studying this music.
Yeah, and also some of the instructors teaching it.
Right, okay, yeah. So the ratio of people in jazz education. Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, so I can only speak to my experience, obviously. And also another disclaimer I would point is that I'm, kind of going from like Seattle, Washington to Rochester, New York. This would be very different if I was like going from like, L.A. to like Georgia, or like an HBCU, or someplace like that, or like, even New York. So, like two pretty white cities, to like a really nice conservatory or something like that. So, there are some barriers. But I mean, I think that from what I've seen, it was pretty low, not a lot. And, there are a lot of reasons for it. I think that, this music over the years has been kind of co-opted, and there was appropriated a little bit by white people. Not to say that like, oh, white people shouldn't play jazz. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I do think that the education of jazz music has been taken and monetized in a way that that keeps certain people out, because it's been turned into a business, which is completely the opposite of what jazz music is. Jazz music is a history. It's meant to be a story and an expression, and that's not something that you can monetize and still have it be true to itself.
And it's kind of interesting. Again, we're not going to solve the world's problems here. I'm just curious your opinions and my opinions here. If you look at the music business, you look at art for art's sake, and you look at the music business and the amount of jazz education in the 1940s and 50s, and then fast forward to now, the vast discrepancies in both. I mean, I don't know. I have no answers, but it's not good.
Well, and it just got me thinking, like if you go over to a jazz musician's house and ask them like for a lesson, what is that lesson going to be? Like, are they going to teach you a lick, or are they just going to like give you a bunch of classical etudes? Like, there were no books of scales. There was no book of altered dominance. There was no book of 2-5-1 licks. There was none of that shit. Like that.
You're talking about a specific point in time. Like
yeah.
Now it would be totally different.
Now it's totally different.
Yeah.
But like, to learn jazz then, like the stuff that we're all like learning, like they're, you go to a musician's house for a lesson, they're having you work on classical stuff, and you want to learn jazz. Well, you learn that by listening. You learn that by like figuring out the melody and playing around that. Now our melodies have gotten a little more complex. The harmonies have gotten a little more complex. So the scales that you have to practice are just a little more complex. But the root of it all is the same. And that's what I do in my lessons.
I saw there's a thing on YouTube, a great pianist, Kenny Barron.
Oh, yeah.
He was talking about, and he's played with anybody and everybody and massive career. And he was talking about, and he wasn't bashing on, he wasn't saying it's better or worse, but the point that he was making was music in like the 40s, 50s, and 60s was much more singable. Yeah. Artists were playing lines that were singable. Mm-hmm. And also the length of albums were, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, like those Blue Note albums. Yeah. And now albums are 80 minutes in length, and who has the attention span to really sit down and hear that? So his point was also that modern musicians and melodies or sentences that they play are not very singable. And he said when someone got a new album back in the day, he and his friends, they would all listen to the album and sing all the parts over and over and over and over again until they had the stuff memorized. But now, trying to do that with modern music or modern soloists is very different and very difficult to do.
Yeah, it's really hard. It's hard to study that, and it's not to say that the music is bad in any way, and I don't think that, again, I agree with you. I don't think Kenny was bashing modern music in any way. It's for me, like it triggers a different part of me, that's a music that I will study, to get a specific sound, to get a specific groove. It's like if I want to replicate a very particular moment in time, that's music I'm going to study, or stuff for people to sample, Actually, I was talking to a friend, this kind of triggers, I was talking to a friend of mine, if I don't perform for another person for the rest of my life, I'm okay with that. Because I'll still have my own music, and that's my expression. So if I sit down at a piano and play the weirdest stuff for 10 minutes, that's fine. Just 10 minutes, that's fine, because I'll have gotten out my expression, and I feel better. And so for me, what that person is doing for their 80-minute album is expressing themselves. And if I don't understand what they're feeling, well, that's me. But maybe there's a bit of that I do. Maybe I understood 30 seconds of what they were saying. Maybe I understood 9 minutes of what they were saying. I didn't get the whole 80 minutes of what they were saying, but I got 9 minutes of it. And for me as a musician, if people understand 3 minutes of what I say, that's great. If they understand 10 seconds of it, that's great. I feel like I've done my job. And the responsibility that I have as an artist is to just create. And first and foremost, I do it for myself. Not to say that I don't love you and 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 you. And appreciate all of you for wanting to listen to the things that I have to say and being there for my feelings as I express myself, either on my album or on stage. But I do it for me. And the fact that you guys want to come and support me in that means the world to me. But I do it for myself, and so that I can feel better. And you guys come because you want to feel stuff. So we have that working relationship, right? And I recognize that. It's like, I had this feeling, let me share that with you. I felt really sad one time. Maybe you guys can understand how sad I felt. Oh man, I felt really happy this one time. Oh my God, I was so hungry. Let me write a song about how hungry I was.
Very cool. All right. Well, Eastman finished up there. While you were out there, did you get the opportunities to play in, visit any clubs, and hang out? What was the scene like out there while you were learning?
Yeah, it was. So, Rochester was very much like a college town, so not a lot going on. They did have a jazz festival, but that was going on after I already left to come back home. So while I was there, It was very much like kind of trying to focus on work. So I was practicing, I was doing schoolwork, I was also working at the Community School of Music, doing a lot of teaching on Saturday mornings. Did the community jazz band and the community musical theater stuff, doing tap dance stuff. So that was really a lot of fun. And then during the breaks, I would come home and do some holiday gigs, hang out with my friends. And then during the summers, that's when I would get some private students, do some gigs, and work at summer music camps. So kind of solidifying like, hey guys, I'm still working on this, still working on that. You can hire me in 4 years. You can hire me in 3 years, 2 years. You can hire me in 1 year. I'm coming home. You can hire me in 2 months. So that's kind of what college was like. Yeah. It was, so there wasn't a whole lot of, the scene, it was a lot of rock and roll blues. And once I was old enough to legally drink, I went out and got involved in some of the community jams, which was a lot of fun. And there were a couple of groups that I played with, kind of some like some like kind of bluesier jam sessions. And it was a lot of fun, but nothing like here, not a big scene. It was a small town comparatively, and but I had a great time, as somebody who's like kind of learning how to, learning the ropes, and it was just purely for fun. And that was something that was kind of lacking at the school. Everyone was trying to like cut each other, one up each other. And the people at these jams in the city was just like, yo, let's play a song. It's like, oh, wait, like just play a song? Okay, yeah, let's just play a song. Wow, that sounds like fun. And so I really enjoyed that aspect.
So Eastman, Rochester, was saxophone performance or jazz performance, and then did you go back for a music ed degree, or?
So I stayed in Seattle. I went to Seattle Pacific University. So I came back to Seattle December 2012. I started working at my old middle school doing their after-school 6th grade jazz band twice a week. And then I had a job working at a Catholic school doing their after-school concert band twice a week that had like 12 kids in it, which was like really cute. And then Bishop Blanchett, local Catholic high school, heard that I was doing some Catholic school stuff. One of their band directors had to quit, so I took over a couple of schools for them. And that finished out the 2012-2013 school year. And I was like, oh, I think I'm going to go to Eastern Washington, I'm going to go to Central, get my thing, because I had already like done an interview there. And they're like, well, hold off, we want to give you a full-time position for the 13-14 school year. I was like, oh, yay, money. So I did that, and then in 2015, they're like, hey, we have this program where, you can either send your kids to Blanchett. I don't have kids. You can either, send your kids to Blanchett for free, or we'll pay for a 30-year grad school. I was like, well, let's do the grad school thing. So I went to SPU, did a 2-year master's in education and teacher cert program. So I did that for 2 years. At that time, I was living in Lower Queen Anne. I was playing with SRJO. I was working full-time for the Archdiocese, and then I was going to graduate school. I was working part-time for Edmonds Woodway, and I was teaching private lessons, and I was gigging with my own quintet with Max and Greg and Cole.
The Fade Quartet.
The Fade Quartet.
Yeah.
So I was working full-time job, 2 part-time jobs, gigging and going to graduate school.
Was that, when you set out to do all this, was that all? I mean, it never ends up the way we are envisioning it when we're planning this.
No.
But being a part of all of these programs or running these programs, was that kind of the plan that
it was pretty close. I mean, so the plan that I had was pretty loose. It was to come back to Seattle, be an educator, and gig. I told myself that I would never be a band leader because it was too much work.
What do you mean, Alex?
Yeah, it was too much work having to get all the charts and call the people and rehearsals. Oh God, never. And then I was like, okay, well I can do it with like 2 people, like me and my buddy. Yeah, we can do duo. Okay, yeah, we can add a bass player. That's okay. Okay, we can add a drummer. That's okay. Okay, okay. Well, yeah. Well, one more horn player. Okay, yeah, that's okay. or we can add a guitar player. Okay, yeah, that's okay. And so it kind of turned into that, over the years, Fade Quartet, Fade, the Alex Dugdale duo, the South Whidbey trio, the Fade Quartet, the Fade Quintet, over the course of 12 years, that's kind of how it became, and around that time it was quartet, and it was kind of self-running because the 200 trio already had their gigs, so it kind of depended on who booked the gig, whether it was the 200 trio plus Alex Dugdale or it was the Fade Quartet. So it was nice, but that was a busy time, busier than I intended, a little bit of burnout, honestly, but it was a good time. It really opened my eyes to like what I was capable of as a young man, as a human being, to what Seattle was capable of, what the community was like, what it meant to be part of a community. When you're like, oh, I'm in trouble, who can I call for help? It's like, I'm just too tired, I can't do this thing, and they're like, dude, I got you, like, let me bring you this. Oh yeah, I can sub for you for that. Or it's like, oh, you need a little bit of money, let me give you this gig, or something, like all kinds of, anything you could ask for. The community was there for you. My horns got stolen out of my car one time, and like, do you remember Pete Gallio? Yeah, he tracked down a couple of my horns for me, and I bought them back from him at like super cheap price or whatever. Like it was beautiful. There were some like really like low moments followed by equally beautiful high moments from the community.
Well, you mentioned something before while we were setting up that I knew that you had some health stuff, but you had said you dropped off the scene. I don't get out because I'm in my own microcosm, but I didn't know that you were off of the scene, like not playing. So what happened? What's going on?
So in 2022, right after the festival, I was teaching. I had just gotten a job teaching middle school band. So if you don't know middle school, it's a jungle. It's a zoo. It is free for all. It is Lord of the Flies on steroids.
All of this is true.
It's oh my god, and I love it, But it was my first time teaching middle school full time, and I was just like kind of at my wit's end sometimes, and I was tired, and I started like losing a bunch of weight, and I just thought it was like anxiety and some depression. Turns out I was having a major thyroid issue, and later on, like 8 months later, towards the end of the school year, when I finally had time to go into the doctor, I got diagnosed with something called Graves' disease, a hyperactive thyroid condition. And so I was like, oh, well, that's why I had such a miserable school year. And so in finally getting that diagnosed and then treated, it had done so much damage. We think that because of that, I also developed some issues with my tonsils. And so I ended up with sleep apnea to the point where I also needed a tonsillectomy. It also aggravated some diabetic conditions, so I needed to have some eye treatments. And I lost all strength in my embouchure. Like I couldn't play saxophone for more than 30 minutes. And then with the tonsils, like if I once I got stronger, my muscles back, if I played for more than 40 minutes, I got this weird lump in the back of my throat. So like I really couldn't do much at all. So I had to take some time off from playing, and I was also going into the doctor. Like I was going into a different doctor's office once a week for various treatments, and then that led to like some like pretty bad depression, and so I had to basically take about a year and a half off and do some major self-care. Basically go take myself to the shop and get everything cleared out and get myself worked on. And I just had my last major work done, my tonsillectomy, about 5 weeks ago, and I'm back and I feel better than ever. I feel over the moon. I feel cleared, and I'm just like ready to start this new year, get it off going strong. I'm so excited to be back, and this is just going to be incredible, and I'm so happy to be able to kind of kick things off by being here with you, man.
Well, no, I'm happy about everything what you said, but I think the takeaway here is don't teach middle school. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying teach middle school, but go to the doctor first.
Fair enough. Or middle school teachers should be paid more. That's what I'm hearing.
Oh,
here.
yes. Yes, also that.
Well, I've taken up way too much time past. Normally, we open things up for questions. So does anyone in the audience here or online have questions for Alex or myself about anything we've covered so far? The mysteries of life and the universe. Yes, you, young lady. So the question is, your influences moving from Seattle to another part of the country, how would you feel it? What would the situation have been like if you had gone from Seattle to the South or California?
Yeah. Man, I mean that's really hard to answer because I haven't been there. I can only speculate from listening to the music of those places that I would be a much different player. I would love to go to those places and spend some significant time. I spent about a week in New Orleans, and I came back with a song called Get Down, Gitdown, which you can find on my album that is still available for purchase online. Hint, hint, wink, wink. To give a sense. So, to go to these different places and spend time, it's all interpretations, right? And so, if there are any rich people out there that want to hear my interpretations of what these places are like, send me money. I'll go down there and then write you guys songs. I think that I would just love to go down to these places and, just soak it all up, but again, unfortunately, I can only speculate as to what it would be like. But I get so excited at the thought of being able to soak in other cultures and experience and interpret the music and food and smells and sights and sounds of other places.
There definitely is. I've talked about this quite a bit with several of my friends, and again, we're not throwing anybody under the bus, but there definitely is, and growing up there, you can speak to this, a Seattle sound in terms of, like, if you talk about, like, saxophone players, and then you go somewhere else and you hear someone who's lived or absorbed going somewhere else, and then they come back. It's definitely a thing.
Yeah.
So that, going along with what you're saying, that plays into that. I mean, you're basically a byproduct of the environment that you're in and the people that you're around.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
yeah.
Other questions?
I did not bring my shoes today, unfortunately.
Well, I guess that's a good question, though. When is your next performance now that you're back and doing stuff? When is the next tap performance where people can come and bask in your greatness?
Oh, my gosh. January 9th at the Seattle Jazz Fellowship. Yeah, January 9th.
Other questions? Any questions online?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a fantastic question. So a couple of things. Number one, where I went to college was actually like upstate New York, right? So I wasn't in the city proper. Not that I was terribly far, call it like, maybe like Portland, to Seattle, kind of a distance, or like maybe like a 5-hour train ride. But I had gone to New York to visit my buddy who was studying at Manhattan School of Music, and I think by the time I had already chosen to go to that school, I wasn't set on becoming a performer. In fact, my dream when I went to school to study music wasn't to be a performer. My dream was to be a really good educator. And again, in order to be a good educator, I thought, well, you got to be at least a halfway decent, performer of music, because I remember all of my teachers were really good musicians, and hearing them be able to demonstrate and also tell me what was going on. They'd be able to write it out, talk about it, and play it. Like, they had everything covered. And they were just so smart, and they could do it. It's like, that's a great teacher right there. And they were patient. And I was like, I need that. That's a good teacher right there. That's Nathaniel. That's Mark Escobedo. That's Michael Edwards. That's Mark Taylor. That's Scott Brown. They're able to write it out, say it, and do it. And I want to do all three of those things. So for me, studying music, studying that performance aspect of it, getting all that knowledge, that was my number one goal. Not to necessarily be the greatest performer. And so for me, the draw to come back to Seattle is that's kind of where my dream was to be that, educator. It just so happened that I was able to make a path was opened up for me here to do both, to be an educator and also to have the ability to perform and have a community that embraced me as a performer and educator. And I am so grateful for that here. Not to say that couldn't have happened in New York, but my primary goal was to come back here and be an educator. There was work waiting for me here. I would come back every year and work at the camps, be in touch with my old teachers. You need help. You need, summer job here, summer job there, gig with my friends here, gig with my friends there, make the money. So, yeah, that's what pulled me back. Plus, I love it here. So, yeah, that's a great question. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, we're going to wrap it up here. But before we do, so Alex, if a young student, and I'm sure this happens to you, if a young student was coming to you and saying, hey, I'm thinking about becoming a professional musician, in 2024, with all the things that you've learned from all these great teachers, what's some advice that you found valuable to you in your experience that you would pass on to them?
Balance. Practice and have balance. Get your heart broken. You got to live your life. Don't be too consumed by any one thing, but know what you're about. Have a priority, but don't give up everything for it. Make sure that you keep time for yourself, and if that means you're going to be a musician, that means that you need to have time to practice and do your music stuff. So make sure you do that, and go to therapy.
Very good advice. Very good advice. Well, thank you all for joining us, either online or in person. If you found value in what we're doing and the series, the majority of our programming throughout the year is 100% free to participate in on all ages. And so if you'd like to support our work, you can make a donation via Venmo or PayPal. The information is on the screen if you're watching from home or up here at the front of the stage. Alex, it's been a sincere pleasure having you for the interview.
Thanks so much, man. This was a blast.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to having you play some music with us soon. So we're going to take a short break for a brief sound check, and we'll get the concert started at 3 o'clock. Thank you so much.